Democrats have a major uphill battle when it comes to the $1.75 trillion social spending proposal, because even before it reaches the Senate chamber, it's likely to face some major changes since it has to follow some complex rules for budget reconciliation with the Senate parliamentarian. Joining us right now, Washington insider Armstrong Williams. Armstrong, great to see you. Happy Monday.
Good morning.
13 Republicans ultimately helped the bipartisan infrastructure bill, as we know, pass the House, 6 of whom from the states of New York and New Jersey, which are going to see big benefits because of this plan. $10 billion in the bill going toward the Metropolitan Transit Authority there. What's your thoughts on the final package?
Well, Jan, the truth is that we will not know the true impact of this bill for many years down the road. It is telling, though, where Biden sees his power after last week's election. And it did not seem like Biden was settled anywhere near less than $2 trillion weeks ago. It didn't even seem possible, but he ended up selling for $1.2 trillion. I mean, what happens is that he realizes, Jan, that he needs to get things done. He needs to show some legislative victory. He needs to get away from this debate about infrastructure because it continues to drag down his poll numbers. And so even if that means sacrifice key components and angering some of the more progressive members of his party, nevertheless, we all should be hopeful that the bill can have a real impact on the crippling infrastructure in this country. Because if you drive, if you fly, if you take the railroad, you understand these potholes, these cracks. You realize if this infrastructure bill is long overdue, and give the president some modicum of credit that he finally got it passed through both houses. Well,
speaking of the progressives in his party, 6 members of the squad did hold firm on their promise. They voted against the bill. In a statement, Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley explained her vote against the bill, stating, quote, "We had an agreement that these 2 bills would move together, not that we would vote for one in exchange for a potential vote on the other if certain conditions were met. Unfortunately, that agreement was not honored." It's very telling when you see a statement like that. Do you foresee, Armstrong, moderate and progressive Democrats successfully coming together to pass the other social spending proposal at this point?
We should be reminded of this new narrative, Jan. The squad and the more radical factions of the Democratic Party have lost all their power. I mean, all of it. Americans have spoken resoundingly and increasingly and have told them that their agenda is not America. It does not work for America. They're funding socialism, not being someone's partner, and instead of being their provider. It does not work. I mean, Jan, just look at Buffalo, New York, the race where radical leftism has no support in this country. I do not think that Biden will really care to listen to them anymore, especially as this election year nears. It's about maintaining some kind of respect in the House and the Senate. And if you look at Virginia, New Jersey, and other demographics across the country, it is resounding. And Jan, I should remind you, even in Trump's reelection where he lost, Republicans did very well on the down ballot. This trend continues what we saw in last week's election.
And you recently even tweeted about the overall approval ratings for President Biden and even VP Kamala Harris. We want to show our folks at home that USA Today poll that was just published less than 24 hours ago, and it shows President Biden's approval rating sinking to a new low of 38%, his disapproval rating at 59%. And then even if you look at Vice President Kamala Harris, her approval rating is at 28%, the disapproval rating at 51%. And voters were asked if the election were held today, Armstrong. They said they would vote for the Republican congressional candidate over the Democratic one by a margin of 46% to 38%. What's your thoughts on this? Because as we know, the midterms are still pretty far away, still a year away.
The sad truth is that the president advocated being a unifier, and people were so caught up, Jan, in Vice President Kamala Harris being the first Black, the first Native American, the first woman. But all that is meaningless if you don't have the results, if you're not on the front line with the crisis at the border, if you're not on the front line where sexual trafficking is at an all-time high on the border, if you're not on the front line with issues that people care about. People could care less if you're a man or woman. They care about results. And I think anytime a bill of this size passes, it can be viewed as a win, but it really got drowned out by the dismal performance in last week's election. I know I keep bringing up the results from last week, Jan, but they paint a picture that is very unfavorable to Biden and Harris and the Democratic establishment. If they want to remain in power, they're going to need to continue to pass bills that tangibly impact Americans and solve issues, Jan, like inflation, and like people who are losing their way of life, these soaring gas prices and food prices and dog food prices, these things that really affect Americans at home, not focusing on transgender rights and social issues and these agendas that Americans don't care about. In a time of prosperity, they would care, but when they're suffering, and also Biden being focusing again, paying $450,000 per person to illegals who are separated at the border from their families. Americans don't want to hear this in this time of crisis. And so I think Biden and Harris should have a sigh of relief, because I think most people would have felt that their polling numbers would be in the single digits by now, given their dismal record and their performance for this country.
Some would say the same. Some would say that despite all the stuff that's been going on, they're surprised they're as high as they are at this point. Armstrong, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Happy Monday to you. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Jan.